The following program is intended for an adult audience. It is separate from my work or that of any guest with any other entity. Welcome to the Education Upgrade Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Schulke. To support this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube and check out the links in the description. The system ultimately works, right? Wrong. The problem is that each teacher solves for weaknesses in our software and our dysfunctional omnibus grade design in unique ways, guided by individual beliefs about what motivates students and what aspects of a course are most important, different levels of technical know-how and comfort with the grading software, and diverse ideas about what students need to learn and how. This only makes the situation more damaging to students and even to the integrity of our schools. That is from the book Grading for Equity: What It Is, Why It Matters, and How It Can Transform Schools and Classrooms by Joe Feldman. I'm back with Miss Morgan.
Hello. That was on page 52 for those that are following along.
Thank you for the complete, thorough citation.
Got it.
Appreciate that. Did you put the commas in the right place? Was it like parenthetical?
That's where my math teacher credential comes into play, and we go, oh, no, not yet. I got to out-Purdue that. Let me pull that up. I got resources. I know which ones to use at least.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I couldn't MLA if my life depended. Well, I mean, I could figure. You could figure anything out.
Double space. That's the biggest part of MLA. Double space, and it's 1 inch all the way around?
Yeah, that's APA too. They're like similar. They're like same, but different, but still same.
I got all the sames right. So the different parts.
Yeah, you did.
We'll check it out.
I know APA. And you were a psychology person. Like, you're familiar with APA formats.
Yeah, I am to a degree.
Oh, you're not?
Not in I didn't do any like research or anything like that. All of my stuff was in undergrad.
Okay. So you were an MLA person.
Yeah, we did MLA for a good chunk of it, but in my senior year, we did our APA because it had to be in that format.
I'm going to just avoid the sure to happen offense of talking about liberal arts personalities. Some of my best friends are liberal arts people. Some of my favorite colleagues are liberal arts people. They know what I'm talking about.
Shoe, if it fits.
If it fits. Hey, we're back talking about this book, Grading for Equity. This is our 5th installment of a however many part series on it. And we've already covered the prologue and chapters 1 through 3, which it's like barely getting us started. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of information, but I mean, yeah, after however many hours we've spoken about it already, we're only on like page
39.
39. We cover about a page per hour.
The math is mathing on that one.
But we've had a lot of like thoughts and feels and stories, and it's made it really real, which makes it more like a book study, which is supposed to be the point.
Got it.
And maybe it's too verbose, but I think that's okay. I think if people take the time to listen to it, and the first 3 chapters are more like, there are a lot of why you should, right? Like the prologue is just, hey, is this book for you? Are you curious at all? Do you care enough to be a little bit curious? And then chapter 1 was what makes grading so difficult to talk about and even harder to change. And that was a cool one because it talks about how uncomfortable these conversations can be. Mm-hmm. And Morgan, if there was like one takeaway strategy out of that chapter, what would you say it is? Like if any teacher listening is like, well, hey, just tell me what to do.
Well, first and foremost, it's gonna suck. So let's embrace it. You first need to embrace the suck and the discomfort. Mm-hmm. And with that, if you feel that and you feel those things, you're like, oh, and even if you feel a little bit guilty, I talked about that in previous episodes, that means you care. That means you're moving into the right direction. And not only, do we embrace the suck, but we embrace the suck because it's possible. So embrace the suck. It is possible. That's my biggest takeaway from chapter 1.
Can I channel one of my favorite podcasters right now? Jocko Willink.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Like, I love that. Good. The conversation's uncomfortable. Good.
Yes.
Your colleagues don't know how to talk to you about this. Good. You're having trouble understanding it. Good. You don't know how to feel about the way you've graded students for 7 years? Good.
Because they're all opportunities.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
Exactly. They're all opportunities for you to, like, if you're not reflecting and re-examining, like, that's the whole point of the things we do have to, the hoops we have to jump through, at least in California for teacher certification. Like, there's so much reflection. Like, hey, did you suck at that? We both know you did. What could you improve, man? And let's give you a little bit of grace to understand that you're figuring it out as you go, because that's how this job works.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
I love that. Embrace the discomfort. Embrace the suck. And
yes.
Good.
Love it.
Jenks, you owe me a Coke.
All right. Pinch poke.
Chapter 2 was a brief history of grading. And man, I think brief is a really good description of it in a good way. It's concise. It's very limited to what's happened within the United States since the Industrial Revolution, when we brought a model over from Prussia. And I want to do that episode so badly, and I keep learning too much. And I come up with an outline, and I'm like, this is too long. Nobody wants to know this much about Napoleon right now.
We're gonna trim the fat.
Have you seen that new Joaquin Phoenix movie, the Napoleon movie?
No. All right, it's on the docket.
Let's do it. Yeah, I want to go see it. He's such a remarkable actor, and the movie looks great.
Cool.
I want to go see it on the IMAX for all. They have like battle scenes and stuff.
Wow.
And yeah.
You're trying front and center. Dang. You want to smell it.
That brief chapter, though, that brief history of grading, what's a strategy to take away from that? Because it really just does kind of explain, like, well, how did we get here? How do we invent grading?
Just kind of reflecting on, do you know where your system came from? Do you know why you use it? If you don't know where and why, you should. You should. So kind of taking the, at least that chapter, that breakdown of, if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, and I'm not talking about, curricula, but we're talking about gradebook and how you enter in the points for that. If you don't know why you're doing it, but you're just kind of doing it, sounds like a whole lot of compliance. And we don't want to continue to foster that within our classes either, as we don't hope to have that for ourselves.
Yeah, or this is the way my mentor did it. This is what my teachers did to me. This is what I've experienced. This is what's familiar. I've been saying in a lot of different jobs, a lot of different fields, like, this is the way we've always done it, is a really good reason to stop doing it that way. That's a really good reason to at least go, okay, does it work though? Does it work? I totally agree. That chapter, just understanding, like, oh, we invented the system of grading to tell if you were, like, smart enough to work in a factory versus a coal mine as a child. Like, that's what it's for, to rank children based on old ideas about intelligence, outdated ideas, disproven ideas about inherent intelligence, and, like, ranking kids on, those kinds of things. Okay.
Yeah. And forming compliance. That's what that was.
Yes. How compliant can you be?
Are you trainable? How trainable are you?
Yes.
Let's go from there.
Can you do, will you obey enough to do a factory labor job compliantly and efficiently? That's what it is. Efficiency. It's very efficiency based. Very Industrial Revolution. Suited the needs of the time. Sure.
It did.
It did. Chapter 3 was how traditional grading stifles risk-taking and supports the commodity of grades. That one we talked for over 2 hours. We had a lot of thoughts and feels, stories, anecdotes. But if a teacher was going to take a strategy away from that one, what would you say, Morgan?
Evaluating, checking out and making sure that we evaluate our the buy-in for the kids, right? So whatever they are learning, seeing, is this something that's not only exciting to learn about? If it's exciting to learn about, that's part of the buy-in in itself. But if it's not exciting of a topic, how can you make it exciting? That is your responsibility. Them learning the material, that's their responsibility. But you presenting it in a way that they want to learn it, that is your job. That is the craft of what we do. So evaluating, like, why would they even want to show up to my show? If I had a show and it was $1 for my, entrance to come into my classroom, would these kids pay $1 to come into my class? If they were given $1 when they came through, the front door, so they had $1. We don't have to worry about, any economic issues here. They were given $1 when they walked through the front door of school. Would they choose to spend their $1 on my class? Why? So creating that sort of environment and excitement of, well, why would they care?
Yeah. Can you generate or stimulate the generation of intrinsic motivation in the kid? Because extrinsic motivators get you compliance. They do not get engagement. They do not get investment. And they don't get learning. And that's pretty proven by research that's cited in this very book, actually. And I was just listening to a podcast today. One of my faves, Andrew Huberman.
I love him.
Oh, my God.
Yes. The lab.
Huberman Lab. Shout out to Andrew Huberman. I would love to get to hang out with that guy for just a little bit and just talk.
Me too.
It's like, first of all, somebody with a biology brain like mine. Oh my God, I nerd out because when he gets technical, I get engaged.
Yes, you get it. You can connect with that.
And he explains it really well. Like I have an undergraduate level of education in biological science, but enough that I understand 90% of what he says.
Cool. Because
he's really good at explaining it. But he had an expert on, they were talking about procrastination. And then they, of course, started talking about motivation and things like that. And they talked about activity design. And I was like, that's my job.
Yes.
That's what I do. Can I design an activity with built-in motivation? Can I start the activity out by making you believe that you want to get to the conclusion?
Exactly.
Like, are we starting with an inquiry, and is that interesting enough to you, or is there something built into it enough that you want to do the tasks to get to the end, and I'm just kind of here as a facilitator, like not in your way? I think that having risk-taking built in too, having risk-taking built in, which in order to do that, you really have to analyze, like, does my grading stifle risk-taking? Are kids taking the safe way because that's the way to get points and that's the way to play this game and work this system? That's what I got out of chapter 3, at least.
Totally. Agreed.
Now we're on chapter 4. Chapter 4, traditional grading hides information, invites biases, and provides misleading information.
How?
All those sound bad.
Yeah.
It all sounds like, hey, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. 7 years in. Woo!
A little bit of grace, though, bud.
Of course.
Like,
of course. We want to get better. Here we are.
I have a vision that in a future time and place down the road, that credential programs will include this in their curriculum, that the science of grading and what grading in a different way psychologically does to a kid's brain at all the age levels. And it is very age specific, right? Like our middles, they have a different reaction to things than a third grader or a first grader, or a high school junior. Like, they're going to react different to different motivators, but it all has an effect. And that's my hope and my dream, is that this science, which is evolving, there's already like a good base of academic research around grading. But it's getting more robust and more popularized, for sure. There's more and more, we finished this book and I bought 3 more books about grading, and they're out there for sure.
Numbers talk.
They do.
Numbers talk.
Faux show.
They are objective.
So, man, hides information, invites biases, and provides misleading information. Whew, that's a lot. So the chapter starts out talking about some of the mathematical weaknesses of what you might call a traditional or a historical grade, like one that uses this, what they call the omnibus grade model, a grade that includes everything. It includes all of your formative stuff, including your homework and your quizzes. It includes your participation and your projects and your notebook and your this and your that, and weighted categories with a mathematically complex average that really puts a lot of stuff into it and distills it down to one letter, and you only get 5 to choose from. And that's like, really, everything we did for 16 weeks or however long your grading term is, 8 to 10 for if you're on a quarter system. I'm going to distill everything you did for that many days of class, for call it 40, 80, 100 days of class. Everything. You get one letter and I get 5 choices. That kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's not really showing completely what the kids know.
Right.
If we have participation incorporated into, just talking about that, having participation be a part of the grade. It's not going to be mathematically accurate to what does your kid know. And you show me what Common Core standard that it tells me that participation is part of the math standard of 7th grade math.
Right.
What my grade is reflecting.
Right.
So to try and fit that in there, it's not going to be accurate.
It's not going to be accurate. Right. And the book does a really good job presenting a case example of a couple of kids that are very different.
Yes.
Academically different and behaviorally different. But depending on how you set up the weights for these categories, they could very easily get an identical grade.
Yes.
And they're not identical kids. And when looking at that grade, you can't tell anything about those kids. And there's one kid that really, really needs a lot of help, and the grade could hide how much help that kid needs because it's padded by compliance tasks, homework and participation and stuff like that. And you go, oh, well, they've got a decent grade. It's good enough. And you don't realize they don't understand anything we're learning. They are not meeting the standards. They are not ready for the next course or the next grade. We're in trouble. In fact, they might even have unidentified special learning needs that we haven't even looked at. Because if you got a kid who's succeeding in your general ed class with no accommodations and they're getting a B because your grade is so padded, we call it grade padding. If your grade is that padded that a kid can learn nothing and get a B, well, you might be depriving that kid of resources they need.
Totally.
By not telling the right story about their learning. And I think the book does a really good job with that example of how that works. And he says in here, our grading system can't render accurate grades when 2 students with entirely different academic and behavior performance profiles receive the same grade. So man, that'd be one strategy I'd recommend to people. Look at your grading. When you put out your report card grades, look at all the grades. And is every kid with the same letter on the report card, do they know the same amount of stuff?
Would they get the same score on their tests?
Yeah.
On their assessments?
Absolutely. If they take the state test in your subject at the end of the year, do you think they'll get very similar scores? Or is there a likelihood they're in wildly different places with their learning? There's importance in all the data we gather. And Feldman does a great job talking about that. As a teacher, you gather hundreds and thousands of data points on a kid, even subconsciously, all the time.
Yes.
From what does your facial expression look like when you walk in the classroom? We gather that every day.
How many times did I redirect you verbally and non-verbally?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, we're making adjustments.
What's your mood like? Your outbursts, your whatever. How well are you interacting with your peers? Are you enthusiastically engaged in class? What's your body language like? What was your posture like today? Do you have this and that with you out prepared? Or all these things, because we're with the kids so immersively that you can't help, unless you're kind of like a psychopath, you can't help but gather data about their emotional and physical well-being and how their lower level needs are probably being met. We have all that stuff and we record data about their behavior because it matters.
Sure.
It helps guide our instruction.
They're growing.
They're growing people.
They are developing.
And more to notice change than anything else.
Absolutely.
If little Morgan's in my class and she normally acts this way and tomorrow she acts a very different way, I'm going to go,
You good?
Yeah, you good? How are you doing today? Have you ever felt the need to ask the how are you doing today and not learn something from it?
No. Because even if they shut me down quickly, that in itself is oh, All right, we're not ready.
That's a big data point right there.
No problem. We're not ready. So far,
Yeah.
okay.
You're so not okay that you can't even talk about it.
We'll get back to you.
That's the big uh-oh.
So yeah, no matter what the response is, no, it's a point of connection. And with connection, there's learning, if there's good intention behind that connection.
For sure. That data has so much value. And especially when we use it to guide our teaching and design our learning activities and how we structure our class, how we choose to form our relationships with the kids, how we communicate with the families.
Definitely.
So much value. And it devalues it when all you do is reduce that to some daily participation points or behavioral compliance stuff that goes in the grade book. Like, it really, I think, I mean, it's an opinion, but I think it devalues it when you take something like behavior and make it part of the academic grade. I think it's way more important than that.
Absolutely. I mean, and for that to be giving points is one way, but also to take away points. If somebody's having a bad day, like, at what right do you have as an educator to say that you are less than you were yesterday, or you are less than you were, however long ago? If we're comparing participation points, it's like, no, that kid had a bad day.
They had a bad day.
Like, that kid had a bad morning.
Man, if you're a teacher that's never had a bad day, please share your secrets. Leave a comment, write an email, something.
Go ahead and DM me.
Right. Write a book and retire, because we'll all buy it.
Woo, me too. I'll get the Audible version, please.
If you're a teacher that's been doing it for more than about 7 minutes and you haven't had a day where you get in the car and vehemently do not want to go to your job today because you're under so much stress sometimes, especially when you're new.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the prep time it can be overwhelming.
And it's the stress also that you put on yourself.
Stress. Yeah. So a kid can have a bad day.
Totally.
Also, does that behavior mean what you think it means? That's another big thing mentioned in the chapter is bias. Talks a lot about bias. Presents a lot of data, a lot of cited research about bias. We might not be the most expert people to talk about implicit bias. We definitely have some.
Sure. Everybody does.
Everybody does.
Yes.
Definitely.
To talk about, for us as two white individuals to talk about major cultural biases, I don't think, we fully can give an explanation or any sort of like representative sample when we don't have all of the research and answers just yet. We just have our very few and far between experiences with all sorts of people and, students, and everyone has bias, and it's reflecting on the bias. And I mean, that's what we were talking a little bit about before we started recording today. Is just like, well, can we recognize that we have bias? Is it hard to? Yes, it's incredibly hard to try and, self-identify whatever biases that you might have, but it is your daily responsibility. That is something that is kind of just give an example after example of when we talk about implicit bias and traditional grading. I mean, the way that you feel about a kid definitely determines how you would grade them if behavior is a part of it, right? Their reactions to you, their interpretations of whatever you might be saying. If you're not on the same page and you don't enjoy one another, it's really hard to get a fair standing of any sort of representative data that's accurate to what either one of us can, produce and give. So with that implicit bias that happens when if we don't understand, certain kids, how they process, how they cope, right? How they go through things, having that in our own judgments of people that, yes, we're professionals, but we don't know everything. We are not psychologists. We are not therapists, right? We, put claim in those hats and whatnot. And we have those conversations to the best of our ability. But unless you got your degree and unless you took those tests to get that certification, you are not a professional in assessing the coping, strategies and mechanisms that younger developing, adolescents are having. So for us to try and have that subjective approach to an objective grade is where we're getting how inappropriate it is. And that is where kind of our bias seeps in little by little, depending on who we are and what biases that we have.
Yeah, I think I would have to really think about it and talk it out with a lot of colleagues to know, is there an instance where having something like that in your grade does not invite bias, even require bias for it to work? The book uses the term subjective exercises of unguided discretion, meaning you kind of arbitrarily and capriciously decide something. And we do it, all day, every day, and we frequently make decisions, about like, can I go here, do that? Can I? And some of that can, have a lot of subjectivity to it. But the more subjective it is and the more unguided it is, the more you don't have a set of consistent guidelines that say, if this, then that, then it invites bias.
Totally.
Because you are going to end up treating two kids differently based on something you don't realize.
Absolutely.
You definitely are. And it, can come down to like, how much do I like their personality? How much are they annoying me today? I hate to say it. No, I don't. Kids know, I know. We're adults. They're 12. Sometimes they do things that you're like, I really wish you'd stop doing that, but you're just being 12.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah, every day. And that it's just them developing, right?
Totally. They're growing and they're learning, and that is why they spend so much time on campus, right, to learn and have all of these different opportunities. Yes, they're going to get them to practice, developing character, but that is not a standard. That is in any of my curricula. So for me to, again, try and grade that and interpret someone's character based on my interpretation on a grade, nah, that's not going to work. No. That's not representative.
I'm trying to think of examples of when I, earlier in my career, maybe even not that long ago, had things in my gradebook that invited a lot of bias. And I know that they existed. I never had like participation in there. I never had that.
I did.
Yeah.
I had participation early. My first year, participation was one of them. And it was just like, I don't even remember what the thing was, but as long as you raised your hand and asked a question that day, there was participation. For me, at least what I had considered could be, as long as it was a relevant question, we'll make that clear. But there were some kids that on some days understood every bit of material to where they were trying to create questions that at times would just make them look like they didn't know what they were talking about. They would try so hard to either create something that's like not even really relevant, or they wouldn't raise their hand because they didn't have it. But that doesn't mean that they didn't know what I was talking about.
Right. Or that they weren't participating in their brain in their own way. Man, I got a boy right now. I have this young man in my class who you would think isn't participating. He's very frequently just kind of forlornly staring down, doesn't raise his hand, doesn't volunteer answers, doesn't interact with his teammates a whole lot. And he almost has a look of melancholy all the time.
Okay.
But let him take a short answer test and write out his answers. It's high school level, easily.
Wow.
Like in my 8th grade science class, like he could take an honors bio class in high school and pull a good grade. Like he's there. He hears everything I say. He learns everything we learn. He's never behind. Doesn't always get all his work done. I think because he knows he doesn't freaking need to.
Yeah, right.
That's where he's at.
But his focus looks different than others.
His focus looks way different. And sure enough, talk to some past teachers, pull the CUME file, learn a little bit about him, or even just look in the our little software management system.
The database.
Who are his contacts? Grandparents.
Got it.
So what does that tell you? Probably nothing great. That's enough to know right there. Oh, okay.
Got it.
Yeah, got it. There's stuff to know there. And so this young man is probably doing the best he can.
Oh, yeah.
And for him to be learning at such a high level and make it to school every day, good for you.
Absolutely.
Good for you.
You're crushing it, dude.
Yeah. Whatever class you want, I need a recommendation for, I got you. But it doesn't look, depending on your biased lens, right, or your perceptual filter, does it look compliant? It just that depends on your perceptual filter.
Totally. Some people see it as I need eye contact, right?
Yeah, I need eye contact. I need you looking at the front of the room.
I need you to nod or shake your head.
Right. You need to raise your hand and answer one question per day. Well, why? That doesn't add to my learning, and I kind of don't want to talk right now or have people look at me right now. I kind of want the world to not exist. I kind of want to not be seen by people. And you think any teenagers are going through that every day?
And now that's the only thing that I'm thinking about for the last 15 minutes, because I know that I need to ask some sort of question before the period's out. So I'm not even paying attention to what Mr. Schulke's saying, because I'm trying to come up with whatever question I have.
I'm just having a panic attack about everybody looking at me.
Yeah. How do we get through this?
Yeah. Said half the teenagers in your class. Yeah.
Damn near all of them.
I mean, there's value in a lot of these behaviors, right? Like learning to actively participate in a group.
Completely.
To engage yourself in class, to advocate for yourself and ask questions when you don't understand. Those all have huge value, but every individual's path to learning how to do that looks a lot different. And I don't know. I don't know if that calls back to this Industrial Revolution need for uniformity and efficiency. I need you all to behave exactly the same. You need to be pod people and all be exactly the same, or I don't know how to manage a class.
Because it makes it easier for you, right? It makes it easier for me.
Of course it does. When I know what to expect, I don't have to plan for the unexpected.
Completely.
And I don't have to try to meet the needs of 32, 35, 42, whatever clear class size is, individual human beings that are all remarkably different. Because they are.
What a job we have.
Oh my gosh. 1,500 decisions a day I saw on the social medias.
Don't ask me what's for dinner.
Don't ask me anything.
Please don't.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, bias, man. We could probably.
They're there.
Yeah.
They're absolutely there. And it's your job to, again, reflect on, is this point that's going in the gradebook reflecting what my student knows? Is this point that I'm putting in the gradebook reflecting how my student was able to perform on this assessment?
I might even say that, like, as a takeaway strategy, if you can look at your whole grading system, look at your syllabus, look at the way you have your grading software set up, or how some of your rubrics look like for projects and things, and try to identify an opportunity for you to insert bias and just notice it. Don't burden yourself with, I have to completely reinvent the wheel today. Can I just spot it? Because if you can spot it, I think that's the hardest part.
Yep.
Spot that it's there. And then feel good about noticing it. I'm stealing a line from my psychologist. Hope it's not trademarked. He's fine with it, I'm sure. Feel good about noticing it. Like, man, I noticed that my rubric for this project we just did, like, I'm grading on, like, appearance, and that's really subjective. Like, so am I giving Susie Q that likes to put glitter on everything, am I giving her a better grade just because she likes the same kind of aesthetic that I like? Or, is this very neat and organized with nice borders and everything sectioned out well? And so I give him a better grade than I give everybody else, when they just haven't learned how to do that yet. Like, he's doing it this way because that's the way his brain works. But that he's not typical, actually. I know I've done that.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, grade something on its presentation.
Yep.
Yeah. 10 points for presentation, which means, does it look like you spent a lot of time on it? But that can look different.
Completely.
Yeah. Find one thing. Look at look at anything you grade or how you grade or whatever. Can I find an opportunity for bias? And then can I think of how to eliminate it and make everything more objective? Exactly like you said, Morgan, like, can I make the grade just measure what you learned and get really good at that?
Baby steps.
Totally. I mean, chapter 3 talked about like a little bit about the trust, like risk-taking behavior. And I think chapter 5 goes back into that a little bit. So I'm excited to talk more about it. The meaning of the grade, right? That's this chapter 4 talks about the meaning of the grade quite a bit and what you want the grade to mean. We've gone into that before. Like, that's another strategy too. Just ask yourself, what do you want your grade to mean?
Yeah.
Like, what should it mean? Is there something that your job tells you it ought to mean? What about your colleagues?
I liked how they did the breakdown of how your digital gradebook works, the information that you plug in based on the breakdown. And if you don't understand the math and what it's asking you, why are you having it be a part of your gradebook, right? So when we're talking about the conjunction of all of these different topics to one grade, the omnibus, right? So it starts off with your homework score multiplied by your homework category weight of 30% plus your test and project score multiplied by test and projects category weight of 40% plus your class activity score multiplied by the class activities category weight of 20% plus your participation score times the participation category weight of 10% equals the weighted contribution or your total weighted percentage. In other words, your final grade. We've seen that in our gradebook, total weighted percentage in comparison to, the total amount of points, right, for that final comparison. And we're putting all of these different categories together. So if a kid got an A, did they get an A in all of these categories? Did they get an A in majority of these categories and kind of bomb another one? Did that category about their participation, did it really matter to bring them down from their knowledge of an A knowledge, but you brought them down to a B because they didn't raise their hand as often as you want to? Is that truly reflecting what they know in math? Right? So that complex equation, if you, as you were listening to that, were overwhelmed and didn't know how to articulate that, that is the whole point, right? Of if it's not simple to explain, how are they going to change anything about it?
Right.
How are they going to identify what they need to work on? And are we giving them tasks to work on as human beings that we're grading, or are we giving them tasks to work on as mathematicians or as scientists? Because that is where we're trying to kind of like narrow down our focus.
Man, if you see a kid that gives up halfway through the term, has an F and gives up, that might be a symptom of the disease that the way you grade has created.
Absolutely.
Because when they feel like, oh, it's helpless, there's no way I can get my grade up. I turned in a bunch of work and I went from an F to an F. Okay, well, this is clearly a waste of my time.
Yep.
So this is now my screw around, take 17 bathroom breaks and check Snapchat class. That's what I'm going to do in here because I don't care about your class anymore.
Yep.
You've shown me, you've taught me that it's hopeless.
Completely checking out.
Yeah. And I've caused it. For sure I've caused it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Sucks.
Sorry, y'all.
Yeah. And that's a simple grade calculation.
Totally.
If you can't calculate every student's grade by hand in like a minute, it's too complex.
Yes.
I would say. And I know in California, like you have to take the CBEST just to start a credential program.
Yes.
Which is reading, writing, and arithmetic. The arithmetic is basically 7th grade math.
It's like the high school exam, even a little bit simpler than that.
Yeah. It's not, if you can pass that, you should be able to do a by hand grade calculation.
Totally.
And if you're like, oh, there's too many things. Well, there's not too many things in your gradebook then. Like, what, are you grading everything?
Yeah.
Really, bro? You're doing the most.
Seriously. Stop working so hard.
Yeah. And it really, when it's simple for the kids to understand, it increases the trust so palpably. Like, really, that's it? It's the only thing that's, yeah, dude, your grade is not going to go up and down. Do you learn or unlearn big things every single day? No, man, it takes time. Like, your grade's not going to go up or down until we figure out how well you learned this. That's it. The trust is just, it's remarkable. It's so remarkable.
And we can't lose it, especially in the middles. If you lose it in the middles, any little bit of trust, high school, it is incredibly hard to build back.
Yeah, in any way.
Yeah, for any kid.
Yes. I agree. I think the middle grades, it's such this like pivotal time. Yes, high school is super important. You're getting ready for career or college paths. You're figuring out what you even are interested in, figuring out who you are as a human being. The middle school, though, man, I was a child. Now I'm becoming an adolescent. I'm in between. I'm forming my opinions about the world.
Yep.
I'm forming my relationships of trust with trusted adults. And it can go sideways. I've said it on here multiple times. That's when it went sideways for me.
Middle school?
Middle school. I checked out of school. I realized, nope, school's bullshit. I'm out. I'm good. And it was largely because of this, because of grading.
Got it.
Because, like, especially in subjects that I enjoyed and I was good at and I could learn pretty easily, like even just listening, auditorily listen stuff and regurgitate it on your science test, or learn a math operation with very few practice problems and just get it, have it click. And then really you're going to mark my grade down because it only takes me 6 problems to do it, so I'm not going to do the other 42. And you're going to, so I'm doing really well at this and you're going to lower my grade because of that. Well, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
Was the attitude of this. I'm just quoting the thoughts of a 12 or 13-year-old boy.
Little shulky.
Yeah, that's exactly what I felt. I don't think I said that to a teacher's face at any point.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told a teacher F you to their face. I don't think.
That's okay. That's all right.
There's some retired teacher that's going to call from the Bay Area and go, hey, I taught at such and such intermediate school.
You're a liar.
I remember. Yeah, and I didn't even write you up, and I should have. You were a little so-and-so, and I was.
Okay.
I was a punk little kid, dude.
Okay.
I went from being a nerd to a little punk.
Okay.
And a lot of that was, it's always lower level needs, right? You got a Maslow before you can bloom, that whole thing. A lot of it was family stuff, parents splitting up, changing schools.
Got it.
Like by the end of grade 12, I went to 10 different schools. There's a lot of moving. Went to 3 different schools in a year once.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so, you really quickly, if you go to 3 schools in 5th grade, you're like, what is the quickest way to make a new group of friends?
Yep.
How do I get people to like me as a little kid? And then, and transitioning from a private school to the public school system, huge culture shock.
Totally.
And go from being a nerd who will go home and read science fiction books, we'll read textbooks for fun, we'll go home and read Scientific American, 100%.
Such a keeper.
Well, my dad was a nerd, and he instilled in me he helped me find a passion. He was really good at can we design the task in a way that develops your intrinsic motivation?
Cool.
Can we make this fun to understand how things work? And that's how, and I've always been that way. Understanding how something works makes it fun to me. And so science and math just came naturally.
Yeah.
History, I think it was maybe the way it was taught early on, didn't develop a huge passion for because it was more history than social studies.
Got it. Yeah, more storytelling rather than...
Yeah, than understanding the complex systems of government and how civilizations are formed and interact. And now I'm a nerd about that too, because I'm well, I want to know how the nationalism developed in Prussia, and that led to a system of education that was developed to meet a need of the military, and I want to know. But man, in middle school, I was a kid with a lot of emotional problems, not a lot of supervision, and I was a little little punk, and I was doing all the bad things that 8th grade parents do not want their kid to be doing, doing all those things, and not engaging in class, not having positive relationships with adults. And what really like frosted the cupcake was, hey, I can do all your math. That means I should get the highest grade possible in this course. And if I don't, then fuck you. That was it. And and think about how many kids like really are at their wits' end emotionally and are in that same place where they're like, hey man, if you can't meet me where I'm at, then I have no time for you.
Absolutely.
Like I'm really a kid that it's going to be a struggle to get a positive relationship with this kid no matter what. And then you show them like, I don't care how smart you are. I don't care if you get this. You need to comply with my behavioral expectations, or I will give you the naughty letter instead of the happy letter. And they feel like the grade is something you give them.
Yeah.
And not a measurement of their understanding.
Or what they had earned.
Yeah. Or achieved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way that they perform is what they've earned. And performing, we're talking about on assessments, not in your interpretation of how many times that they should ask a question in class.
Totally. So why does that anecdote about my childhood matter? Well, because it talks in the chapter about the meaning of the grade. And I think the kid needs to understand the meaning of the grade. And it needs to be what's going to make that kid value the grade in the most meaningful way. Like when they understand, oh, this is just a measurement. You're like taking my temperature of my brain, though. You're like measuring what my brain can do so far. And that's really important, the so far. Like growth mindset, Carol Dweck, like super, super important.
And it also gives them less excuses of why they received a certain grade if you limit your grade book down to what you're testing them on. Then they can't say, oh, I got a B because she doesn't like me. It's like, no, bud, you got a B because you have a B level understanding of this mathematical concept from these standards.
Right.
That's what your B means. Not because you showed up tardy every single day, not because you didn't ask any questions in class, but because that's what you got on your assessment for me. There is no other excuse other than your understanding. So what can we do about your understanding? That is where I come into play of like, oh, understanding? You need something different? Cool. Sign me up. That's my job. But to try and modify your behavior, I don't get paid enough for that.
No, and using the grade as a system of threats and rewards to try to modify behavior, it doesn't work anyways.
No.
That's very proven. It doesn't really work. If it did, then that's what then no schools would have behavior problems at the end of the school year.
Exactly.
You'd get them in August. You'd be a pain in the butt about your grade, attach the grade to their behavior. It would motivate all of them. And by Christmas, they'd all be angels, right? No, because it doesn't work. Yeah. You think it works because it feels like the only weapon at your disposal, especially if you're not super strong in the relationships category.
Oof, false sense of control.
Yeah, it really is. It really is a false sense of control. Not to throw shade, but, there's power in realizing that reality, that what you're doing isn't working. That's empowering to go, hey, I know that I tried this and I probably need to do something else. I need to try something new because I have the exact same amount of behavior stuff in May as I do in August, at the end of the year as I do at the beginning. That's worth noticing. Man. It all comes back to relationships. Yeah,
100%.
Always. Grade hacks.
Okay.
That's the last thing.
Okay.
I love that it gives some examples of grade hacks.
For the omnibus grade.
Yeah.
Right. So if you are in that system right now and you're not able to start from scratch at this point, here are at least six different hacks that you can incorporate into your grade book to try and make it a little bit more equitable to what your kids know.
Yeah. I don't like the hacks though. I like
Which ones do you like? Any of them?
Honestly, I think the hacks, the way he presents them is like, these are the things that we do that kind of prove that the way we're grading isn't working. Because if you have to get to your grade reporting at the end of a grading term, right? You're at the end of a quarter, end of a semester, and you have to report grades. And you do these things because you feel you need to make your grades accurately reflect the kids. Well, then your grading isn't good.
100%.
Like if you have to do things like, well, we're going to drop your lowest test score and we're going to do this and we're going to do that and do this and do that. And curve things. Oh my God, curving.
Yeah.
Get out of my face with that. Like selectively averaging scores, create extra. Oh, I'm going to give extra credit. Like, okay, you can get your grade up with extra credit. Not extra credit. Like your grade's low because you didn't learn. Like we can work on learning those things. And
Totally.
like you can retake a test and show me that you get it now.
Totally.
Or maybe I learned that my test sucked and you do get it. I talk to you and I'm like, hey, Morgan, you got a low score on this because remember we were learning about natural selection? And you're like, I get all that. Okay, let's take a look at your test. You wrote here that this and this and this. Oh, then we have a conversation and realize like, I just didn't understand. Like you didn't have an option for expression of your understanding. Now I realize the way I need to differentiate my test. I realize the way I need to UDL the way that I assess you. And that's empowering. That's a strength because I make my grading more accurate, more precise. I become a better brain scientist. I can measure what's in your head.
Yes. And I mean, like, none of these hacks, so we'll put it in this way. These hacks, from the way that I interpreted that they were introduced, are there to add as a part of your arsenal potentially for this school year. If you're in the middle of this school year and you already have this setup of this complicated calculation for how to assess your kid's grade, right? That total weighted percentage. These hacks, like dropping the lowest score, curving up, those extra credits, bumping up for effort or growth, like as a part of my grading practice, I will use none of these because my system that I have set does not need this to help fill in any of that balance.
You have though, haven't you?
What?
Used some of these hacks in the past.
Absolutely, I have.
Yeah, me too.
Hell yeah, I have.
Yeah, like
extra credit assignments was a huge one. Assigning, most of my tasks, if not all of them, are academic. Bumping up for effort or growth. Hell yeah, I have. Right, my 88.5s. I might bump you all the way to a 90 if you are constantly asking questions, or at least that's what I used to do. Of seeing that of like, oh, they're trying their best, or I connect with them. I get what they're trying to do. I get what they're trying to say.
Or you're subjectively interpreting that like, oh, he has a good understanding. He always has the right answer when I call on him. And well, if he does,
then
what's up with his test scores?
Yes.
What's up with that?
So having these hacks, these are the, oh no, how do I close up some of the issues that are in the traditional system that you might be already in?
Right.
And incorporating these hacks as a maybe one-time thing that is done, if that.
A stopgap measure for, I've got to do something because I've got a kid that understands what we're teaching and still has an F because they don't turn in homework.
Exactly.
And I've got to do something. I got to figure out how to make a legitimate D- for this kid because they do not deserve to fail a class because they clearly get it. And clearly my grading is not measuring that accurately.
Exactly.
And oh crap, grades are due tomorrow.
Exactly. So if we're in that position and we're in that situation, the system is broken, whether it's your system or the school system, the system is broken. And what can you do to close that gap and create the bridge for next year so that there aren't those gaps, so that dropping the lowest score is not a reality as a part of your arsenal of grading. And, extra credit assignments are not a part of the reality of how students learn in your class. So don't
I like that
use
you
them a
brought it
lot.
up that way. Like the way I interpret it was like, hey, if you're doing this, something's wrong. And I think that's true.
Yes.
I think if you've been doing all like several of these grade hacks, they're just like part of your syllabus, and you've been doing this a long time, then there's something wrong with that grade.
Yes.
Because that just shows me that you have a grade that doesn't measure what you really want it to measure.
It's loopholes.
Yeah.
You're giving us loopholes.
Totally. I think it really is a symptom of what the grade should measure, and you recognize that it doesn't. Either that or it's an indicator of bias because you want to bump a kid's grade up because you like them.
Totry.
Which, guess what? Teachers don't have favorites, do they?
No, not one single one.
At all. I remember this in college. And maybe I've talked about it on here before, but I had a statistics class. And it had an omnibus grade. I don't think it had participation, although it may have. I was at a community college. The professor was awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. One of the few like PhD level professors at this community college. And I had her first year teaching there, and she was so good. Such a good teacher, patient, kind. And she was just doing what she had experienced. Because like college teachers, they get no pedagogy instruction. None. They're just like, oh, you have a PhD? That means you can teach. Great.
Yeah, but that means you know what you're talking about.
You probably know a lot about your area of content. You know how the statistics work for sure. Like you probably invented new statistics to get your PhD, you know? So you can definitely teach kids how to, calculate an R-squared value and like how it all works, and, how to analyze a frequency, histogram or a scatter plot. Like you can teach kids about stats. But the grade had the weighted categories. And, homework was worth this much, quizzes are worth this much, midterms worth this much, finals worth that much, 4 things. But the way they were weighted, I had a middle B going into the final, like an 85.0%.
Okay.
Close to that. And I did the calculation of what if I get this grade and what if I get that grade on the final. And regardless of my grade on the final, I was coming out with a B. This was a school that didn't do pluses and minuses.
Okay.
The highest I was going to get was an 89 point something. The lowest I was going to get, even if I bombed the final, was like an 81. So it really doesn't matter if I do well on this final. And I'm like, I am sure that as a professor of mathematics, she does not want that to be the case. And I remember the look on her face because I went to her office hours and I was like, hey, Dr. fill in the blank. I remember her name because she was great. She's a great teacher. But I went, hey, Doc, like, I did the calculations for like, what if I get 100% on the final? And then what if I get like a 50% on the final? And either way, I'm going to come out with a B. And she just looked like someone died.
It's like embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
She was like, wait a minute. And she gets a piece of paper and scrawls out and does the calculations herself real quick. She's like, all I can say to you is this. Do the best you can on the final. Do the best you can on the final.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I kind of took that as like, I'm not promising a grade bump, but if you get that 89, I'm going to bump you. And I did. And she did. She bumped me to the A.
Cool.
But it mathematically in the grade wasn't legitimate. She found a way to make it work in the grade book, I'm sure.
One of these hacks.
Like drop the lowest homework grade or something, right? And that was all I was missing was like homework because, I'd figure out how to do like a, chi-squared test or whatever. And like, I don't need to always put practice problem. I'm not going to turn this in. I'm busy. I'm working full time, which I was like. But it's just an example. Like it's at all levels. This is a professor of mathematics who had a grading system that made it possible for that to be the case. That I'm going to get the same grade out of your class regardless of what I get on the final, regardless of how much I prove to you I know how to do on a comprehensive exam, everything we've learned for the whole semester, regardless of my grade, I'm going to get a B in this class. And I think the reason that she went, I just saw a ghost face, is because she realized the lack of validity and accuracy of the grade.
There's no weight to that.
There's no weight to it. And you're teaching a statistics class, which is all about validity, reliability. Yeah. Are you measuring what you say you're measuring? Like the irony is remarkable. And that's a comparable level of instruction about grading as any teacher in K-12 education, pre-K-12 education is going to get, right?
Yeah.
Like very, very little. How should you structure your grade? Well, start with, what do you want it to mean?
Yeah.
What do you want it to mean? And that'll tell you what it needs to measure.
What are your standards?
That's probably a great place to start.
Yep.
What is this kid supposed to learn in my class? How much can I make that consistent, objective, take all the bias out? The questions at the end, there's only 2 in this chapter.
Nice.
Yeah, they're great. So the first one, I love these questions to consider.
Me too.
And I love that this book is set up for a book study, which is the point of these episodes we're doing, to kind of model what a book study should be like. Read it a chapter at a time, find a colleague you trust, talk about it, right? So the first one, what confidence or uncertainty do you have that 2 teachers in your school would assign the same grade to a student?
I don't have that confidence.
None?
I would say across my campus, no.
Okay.
In certain sects of so I would say with maybe a couple groups of us middle school teachers that, yeah, we probably would give a similar grade, but only because we're using this type of system to where we're taking our, subjective interpretations out of the equations, and we're giving the same assessments so that, there's that controlled variable right there of giving them those same bits of material, see what they're able to produce. And there are some teachers that were on the same page of like, no, we're not doing extra credit, that kind of stuff. Yes, I would feel comfortable with those teachers, but considering that's not a consistent standard and expectation across my entire campus, no, I don't necessarily have a confidence that 2 teachers in my school would assign the same grade to a student. Groups of us, sure, but not the, full spectrum of us. So that could definitely improve and change. And it shouldn't be the case of us not giving the same group or not giving them the same grade for that, particular student. How about you?
Within my department, and I have a large department, 8 science teachers at a 7-8 school.
Crazy.
It is crazy. There is 1 teacher that I know with absolute confidence we would give the same grade, but we teach different grade levels.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm teaching 8, she's teaching 7, and she's great. But we do a lot of our collaboration after school together. Like, we'll bring each other our grading rubrics and, hey man, what do you think about this? Like, what do I need to tweak on it? And we're very much doing our best to work with our team and our colleagues to help everybody kind of get closer to. The problem is we have differing levels of experience. I mean, we've got some vintage personnel with,
the antiques,
well-practiced practices, one could say.
Got it.
And they're great. Wealth of knowledge and experience, and full of strategies and lesson design ideas, and also ideas about how to grade. That might not be based on modern research all of the time.
Got it.
And same at my school, like throughout the school, I've have low confidence in that. Although I do see a lot of individuals now starting to move that direction. I see it a lot more in younger folks. Not always. Like a friend of mine who's a colleague who teaches history. All the time we're having conversations about this kind of stuff. Like, hey, will you look? And I don't teach history. Like, but hey, will you look over these test questions for me, or look over this rubric? Like, what do you think about it? And we have these kinds of conversations like you and I are.
Cool.
And it's good. So it's out there. I think it's just a long road to consistent, uniform application of these principles in developing grading systems that do what we want, that work well, that don't invite bias, that, are mathematically sound.
Paving the way.
Paving it. Second question. Are there teachers with reputations as hard or easy graders? What specifically defines them as that? How does this categorization make you feel? How does it make that teacher feel? How do students react? Well, that's like 4 or 5 questions.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that there are teachers with reputations as hard or easy graders on campus. What specifically defines them is that how easily students are able to negotiate their case to said teacher, right? There are, I would say the hard graders are a little bit more absolute in their decision, not as much of a change no matter what the conversation is or reasons behind whatever. But the easier teachers, at least that I've seen and noticed, are ones that are a little bit more not empathetic. I don't want to bring that as something that's a negative quality, but teachers that feel a little bit more and connect with their students on topics that are outside of the standards that we are specifying and that we are testing our kids on. So those teachers that do take into consideration, the stuff that's going on in certain kids' lives and whatnot. And, I have my sibling. I got an 87. Can you round that up? Can you round that up to an 80? I got my sibling going on. I got this, this, and this. I got this, this, and this, and this. Can you just round it up? Like, that I'm a good kid. That I got all this stuff and whatever. Just work with me here. Work with me. The easier teachers are the ones that I've noticed kind of work with students in a way that is giving them leniencies that not necessarily that they don't deserve, but we're focusing on topics and things that they don't have sometimes complete control over. So, my easy teachers make it more complicated where their grades come from. It's way harder to justify. I gave this kid a B even though they had an 87 right before this because of this, and this, whereas a similar student that also had an 87 but doesn't behave the same way as that first student did, would you round them up? Why not? Those types of considerations to think of. The easy teachers would take those thoughts and incorporate them into the cushion, and the harder teachers don't include that, is at least my interpretation.
Where do you think the kids think you stand? Like easy, hard, where do you think they would place you?
I think that they would place me, and this is a cop-out, but they would place me at fair. My grades are fair. My grades are explainable. There is a point A and a point B. It's not the pinball of connection. So some students, although it's fair, it is hard for them. Mm-hmm. Other students, it's fair, it's easier for them. So I don't think I would, I don't know where I would lean. I would try to lean and hope I lean more towards the hard teacher. But I think first and foremost that I would be fair.
Man, that'd be great data to have. Just thinking for myself, like to know, to have somebody else outside of my classroom really like survey a bunch of Likert scale questions. Mr. Schulke is fair. Mr. Schulke is an
You do it
easy
at the end of the
teacher.
year.
Could be.
Do an anonymous one for your kids before they leave as like an exit ticket or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I need this for me. I need to review this over summer. I might do that with my kids.
That'd be useful.
We did that with our teachers in college, right? Give them their survey them out.
Yeah. We did that at the end of we did a course evaluation for every course. Man, I left some rough comments on some of them.
Scathing. How dare some of these professors.
You know what my most scathing comments were about?
Tell me.
about grading.
Good.
About grading and assessment, the things I'm most passionate about. I think I've been emphatic about this for a long time. I mean, definitely since at least I was 13.
Cool.
And I think I've never stopped, and stumbling back into it this way, maybe it's kind of fortuitous, but yeah. I remember like at university, like leaving, being in a pre-calc class and going like, dude, I get this. Like, why do I have to do that? Why is the homework even part of the grade? Like, is everyone here an adult? Can they decide whether or not to do the homework? And what do you care? Mm-hmm. Why is homework part of the grade? May I please have my grade be 100% the final exam? Mm-hmm. And may I take it early? And like, no.
Yeah.
How dare you, sir?
Why?
Like, no, seriously, can my grade be 100% the final?
Yeah.
And I'll take it early and then stop coming to class.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
make it comprehensive, baby.
Yeah.
From the beginning to the end.
I can stop annoying you. You can stop annoying me. We can get this over with. And look, I had great, like the grad students that taught all my like discussion sections and stuff. Everybody was great. Teachers were great. Things were great. It was this situation, the setup. None of them were bad people. Mm-hmm. None of them were incompetent. Everybody was great. Everybody, for how stressed out and mouthy and belligerent I was as a student, assuredly, everyone was very kind, very patient, very helpful.
Cool.
Maybe I wasn't as much of a pain as I paint a picture in my memory. I was probably close to that.
It's a story you tell yourself.
Yeah, it's fine. But I remember like those were the things that bothered me the most. It's like how things were graded. Mm-hmm. Like, no, God, I thought when I finally went to college that this was finally going to be over. Mm-hmm. I heard these tales of like, oh my God, classes in college, like your whole grade is going to be the midterm and the final. I was like, finally.
Yes.
Thank goodness, I'm finally going to be assessed on what I learned. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'll get on my report card. Mm-hmm. And why, as a 30-year-old going back to college, am I stressed about my report card? Because I don't feel like it's been just my whole life. I feel like they've all been nonsense. Mm-hmm. All of them. And that stinks.
It does.
It stinks. Like that was a huge contributor to me not going back to college for 10 years. Graduated high school, and the most I did for 10 years was like some technical school, a little bit of community college here and there.
Cool.
Yeah. And then 10 years out of college, like, okay, now I know, or 10 years out of high school, went, all right, now I want to do real college. Now I know what I want to study. Now I believe that school might have something to offer me. Mm-hmm. Before that, I didn't believe school had anything to offer me. So like, no, technical school. I'm going to choose technical school because you go there to learn what you're supposed to learn to do a specific job. Mm-hmm. And if you don't learn how to do that thing, you don't pass.
You either know it or you don't.
You know it or you don't. Mm-hmm. And your whole score is tests. Mm-hmm. That was great. Paramedic school, tests. Your whole score in the entire class is your tests. That was great. I loved that. I loved it so much. Because it was, like you said, fair. Mm-hmm. It was fair. It was easy to understand. It didn't matter if I had an abrasive personality. It didn't matter.
Mm-mm. It's what do you know?
It didn't matter. And I was very affected by having gone through that as a kid. Like, I was not easy to like as a teenager. I have no doubt.
Okay.
No doubt. But having that affect like my grade just felt like, man, everything's wrong with life. Mm-hmm.
Probably reassured you too that the world is shitty.
Yep. Yeah, it is. None of the adults can be trusted. None of the adults can be trusted. Mm-hmm. Nobody in a position of authority deserves respect.
Because they're just going to judge me based on what they see.
Yeah, their morals are flawed. Mm-hmm. They're not competent. None of these teachers are measuring what I'm learning. Like, nobody knows what they're doing. And I was like, do you really want to teach a 13-year-old
mm-hmm.
that none of the adults can be trusted and they're all incompetent? That might be what kids are taking away.
Yeah.
It might be. Not in every case. Some 13-year-old kids are going to be more forgiving than that.
Yeah.
But what do you want to be teaching them? Because Everything, down to the weighted categories in your syllabus, you know, everything tells the kids something. They have a reaction to all of it. And especially as they become older, they have a sense of right and wrong, fairness and unfairness. Things make sense or they don't. Or this teacher's very biased, you know, or, you know, how do you get a good grade in Miss Morgan's class? Well, it depends on how much she likes you.
Yep.
You do not want that.
Yep. Awful.
I don't want that.
No.
I want a kid to know that it doesn't matter how much I like them.
Exactly. That shouldn't be a factor on our jobs.
Yeah. All right. That's it for chapter 4.
Quickie.
You want to close with anything, Morgan, or are we good?
I mean, I think we're good. Do those little reflections. Check your bias. And for all the things that you are overwhelmed that you need to change, for those grade hacks that you already have incorporated into your system, baby steps. But start plugging away.
Totally.
Baby steps.
It's going to be different for everybody. There is, you know, the rest of the book has a lot of guidelines about how to do it. And we'll do the best to keep going through it and giving some takeaway strategies and bit by bit make it listenable. So if you've listened so far, thank you very, very much to every listener. And if there's something more you need out of these, if there's information you need or you'd like to hear something more about, like, I'm going to read comments. Do you want to be gotten a hold of?
Sure.
We haven't really done that.
Sure. People can reach out to me. I'll give my personal email.
Oh, wow. You're brave.
Well, I mean, it's my Gmail, so it's like as professional and personal as we're going to get. I have a couple Gmails. So I'll give you my professional one, but not my school email.
Okay.
But yeah, I can definitely do that for any of the questions on how I operate my class or any of the topics that we've chatted about. If anything struck a chord, shoot me an email. I'll do my best to get back to you. Definitely. Okay. For sure.
All right. So we'll put your contact info in the show notes. Education Upgrade podcast. There's different versions on some of the different socials. One of them is education.upgrade, but you can find it on everything. And you can email me, Jake at lynxlearninglabs.com, LYNX learninglabs.com. And check the show notes for other contact info. We'd love to hear from people. Thanks, Morgan, for being here for all this.
Thanks, Jake. It's a joy.
You're a joy. Bye, everyone.
Toodles.
Thank you for watching and listening. We plan to bring you new episodes regularly to continue studying this book and others. To support this project, please subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, and of course, we appreciate all the likes, reviews, and the comments on all your favorite podcast platforms. You can also buy this book and others using links in the description. Thank you again for your time and attention.